My name is Sarah Hallett and I'm chair of the UK Junior Doctors Committee. Last year was a significant year for the UK Junior Doctors Committee, with a huge amount of hard work across all four nations, including the resolution of the long-standing junior doctors contract dispute in England. This year would therefore have centred around the implementation of these hard-fought wins, as well as a return to formal trade union negotiating structures to ensure further gains for our members. That was the plan, but none of us could have foreseen the challenges that 2020 has brought. It has tested us as a profession and as an association in ways we have rarely seen. To protect our members and our patients, by necessity, the work of the Junior Doctors Committee has been focused on the pandemic and its impact on not just work or training, but the well-being of our workforce, so long neglected by employers and government. We have had to predict and mitigate issues that we have never experienced before, and ensured that the impact of Covid-19 has been recognised and factored in for the purposes of remuneration, progress in training and well-being. This has been no mean feat. We have worked with, explained to, and at times argued with key stakeholders, including the Department of Health and Social Care, national level employers, statutory education bodies, regulators and the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges, to ensure that junior doctors are not just represented effectively at every level, but the decisions made in the face of something so unprecedented are made with the interests of trainees in mind. During the initial stages of the COVID-19 outbreak and response, we were faced with an unprecedented challenge. There were alarming reports about the spread of the virus abroad, with health systems in comparable countries like Italy essentially collapsing. We knew there would be issues here with our trust's abilities to create ITU capacity and to roster staff to ensure necessary safe cover, whilst also maintaining our contractual clauses. This was as a result of a combination of factors, including increased clinical pressures, reconfiguration and redeployment of staff and services, and particularly staff shortages due to sickness and self-isolation policies. This situation required rapid and decisive action at a national level to prevent our staff being totally overwhelmed and to ensure the safety of our patients. A joint statement between the BMA and NHS employers was agreed to provide a pragmatic approach to rota rules in this unprecedented crisis, whilst ensuring that safety and sustainability was maintained for junior doctors and their patients. It made clear that any deviation from the TCS could only take place in instances where it was impossible to implement all of the limits on hours and rest, and laid out how this situation should be managed. This agreement provided stability and flexibility in a time of national crisis during the peak of the pandemic, where otherwise we could have been overwhelmed. Alongside this, we worked hard to ensure that all rotas worked due to COVID were paid correctly and fairly, with pay protection against previous rotas. Even further, we ensured that where there were shift patterns which had no provision for payment within the TCS, we reached agreement that these shifts must be paid. And we have worked to equip local BMA staff and L&C reps with information to aid and support this being delivered locally, delivering excellent wins in trusts and regions that have seen pay protection against prospective rotas too. After significant lobbying, we have also secured agreement across all four nations that annual leave days not taken due to the pandemic can be rolled over or else paid at the end of the placement. By the end of June, the JDC decided that the time had come to withdraw the statement in England to protect trainee health and well-being and avoid potential complications of allowing the statement to continue past the recommencement of junior doctor rotations in August. We, as junior doctors, had shown again that we were willing to step up in a crisis, and we've been clear about what must be done moving forward. As such, all rotas must now be compliant with the full 2016 TCS in England. We continue to advocate that those doctors who have been shielding and subsequently assessed to be at continuing high risk continue to be able to work and train wherever this can be facilitated through remote working, and that there should be no financial detriment for these trainees. I have recently written to each of the trust CEOs in England to reiterate that those in the shielding group must be appropriately supported. After 6 years of lobbying for a no-fault ARCP outcome, the JDC have been involved in the development of the Outcome 10 specific to COVID, allowing doctors to progress through training despite difficulties presented by the pandemic, and ensuring progression and access to higher pay points could still be facilitated in spite of these challenges. The out-of-programme pause proposal has been developing in England since 2018 in order to allow trainees the options to temporarily step out of their postgraduate training programme while still working clinically and often flexibly. The JDC has been a key stakeholder in this work, and this will be made available to trainees via HEE local offices from late summer 2020, allowing our members the opportunity to work more flexibly for the benefit of their health and well-being. JDC has also been feeding into a newly formed Conference of Postgraduate Medical Deans working group called Support in the Time of COVID, which is focused on the needs of trainees during the Covid-19 pandemic. We are meeting regularly with representatives from all the Deanery Professional Support Units, or PSUs, across all 4 nations, and are working together to produce a minimum set of standards set for those support units across the UK. We have also been working on issues outside of the pandemic that are important to all our members, and with which we have still managed to achieve success. During this session, we have ensured the implementation of the hard fought for contractual improvements in England, as voted for by our members at referendum last year, making a reality of these gains. During this session, we have seen these changes to the contract in England to make our rotas safer and our pay for antisocial shifts fairer. These represent the culmination of years of work from the JDC and are too numerous to list in full here, but range from changes to the maximum number of shifts in a row, to time off required after night shifts, to fairer pay for weekend and twilight shifts. Version 9 of our contract in England, which includes all of the remaining elements agreed, will be published imminently. From October 2020, there will be a new 5th nodal pay point from ST6, with trainees' pay increasing by £3,000, and this value doubling in future years. This financial investment recognises the seniority and experience that these trainees have. Funding for the payment of GP mileage for GP trainees has been secured and will apply retrospectively to when the provision first entered the contract last year, so we can finally see this contractual improvement enacted for these trainees. And we will finally see the Code of Practice for rota notifications contractualised, a key step towards ensuring that all junior doctors get their rotas on time and therefore improve on work-life balance. This year, we have also made huge strides in education and training. Our members consistently told us of the difficulties they had in having their previous experience recognised when chasing specialties. The publication of the Transferable Capabilities Framework after 3 years of work between the BMA and other key stakeholders is a significant step forwards to personalised and streamlined training programmes that value individuals and retain doctors in the workforce and will benefit junior doctors across the UK. This work on individualised training pathways has also contributed to another improvement in training. Previously, for some trainees with experience gained outside of formal postgraduate training, the rules in the UK meant that they were unable to gain a CCT and that were instead granted a CSER CP route to specialist registration. JDC have highlighted this issue to the GMC for some time, and in May, the GMC announced that certain specialty trainees would be granted a CCT instead of a CSER CP. More needs to be done. Several specialties do not yet have access to this progressive route, and we continue to engage with the GMC to ensure that these specialties are included, thereby extending this to as many doctors as possible. Our work last year with the Foundation Programme Review has developed further this year, with publication of the Foundation Doctor Charter, which provides best practice guidelines for local education providers in England. These standards include the requirement for 1 hour of development time per week for F1s and 2 hours per week for F2s. This will ensure that doctors at the start of their careers will have the time required to progress as clinicians. Finally, after lobbying by the JDC and successful pilots over recent years, we are delighted to see the commitment now made by Health Education England to roll out flexible, less than full-time training to all junior doctors across all specialties. It means that over the next 2 years, as it is rolled out, trainees in England will no longer need to meet specific criteria to qualify for the right to work less than full-time. During the year ahead, our task will be to counter the ongoing impact of COVID while also rebuilding and continuing non-COVID work to improve the lives of junior doctors. The JNCJ is where we deal with the ongoing maintenance and negotiation of the contract. The re-establishment of this forum had been impacted by the pandemic. However, we have been working and preparing for the next stage in these negotiations. The first phase will be the establishment of several working groups to look at issues related to the following areas which we know still need to be addressed: annual leave, non-resident on-call, GP recruitment and retention of trainees in general practice, and pay parity with hospital medicine, and health and well-being of doctors in training. As part of the ongoing contract implementation in England, we will be reviewing and publishing guidance on the contractual mechanisms and provisions as detailed in the 2018 Review Framework Agreement, including on exception reporting, guarding of safe working hours, and work scheduling. Ensuring that these processes work in practice, on the ground, in our hospitals and in our practices is incredibly important work that we will be taking forwards. We continue to actively engage with and support the Welsh JDC in their negotiations with the Welsh Government towards a new contract for doctors training in Wales, and will be supporting junior doctors as they seek to negotiate updated terms and conditions for trainees working in Jersey. We will be continuing to push for flexibility in training, and we will seek to establish step-on, step-off training, the ability to pause training with an easy, facilitated return, portfolio careers, and the ability to pursue interests in and outside of medicine. These developments are crucial to ensuring retention in training, as well as the medical workforce more generally. The pandemic has thrown into sharp relief the importance of well-being and facilities in the workplace, but this should not just be in times of crisis. The £10 million of investment into junior doctor rest facilities and the Fatigue and Facilities Charter has provided a strong basis, but we must continue to build on this, with well-being of staff at the very core of everything that the NHS does. I should have been speaking with you from a stage in Edinburgh to an audience of hundreds of members of the BMA representative body. Recording it from home feels very different. My hope, though, is that through this virtual update, the hard work of the Junior Doctors Committee this year will be apparent and available to even more of our members. It has been a privilege to represent junior doctors this year. Never let it be said that junior doctors will not step up in times of crisis. Junior doctors have been an integral part of the efforts against Covid-19 over the past few months. I have seen firsthand the ability of my colleagues to adapt in an ever-changing environment, the sacrifices made, and the sweat and the tears that doctors have put into working for the NHS during this pandemic. This must not be forgotten during the years ahead, either by those who have influence over our working lives or ourselves. In what are likely to be difficult months to come, training for junior doctors must be a key consideration if we are to ensure that doctors are able to progress through their training as planned. Staff wellbeing must be at the heart of the NHS, and the problems highlighted of staff shortages and burnout must finally be prioritised. I want to say a huge thanks to our reps and to our incredible staff, without whom none of this work would happen. And thank you for watching this all the way to the end. If you're a junior doctor and not already involved with the JDC, please consider getting involved at a regional or a national level. This coming year is likely to be just as unpredictable, but whatever happens, we will still have your back and will always be fighting for the rights of junior doctors. Thank you.